Welcome back to our lecture series. Let's start with a distinction that quietly determines who really controls sustainable investing: active versus passive. An active ESG fund employs analysts to pick individual securities they judge to be sustainable and attractive. A passive ESG fund does something much simpler and cheaper. It just tracks an ESG index, mechanically holding whatever the index says to hold. And, as we saw last video, most sustainable money now sits in passive index tracking products because they're cheap and they scale beautifully. But think carefully about what that shift means. If a passive fund simply replicates an index, then the real decisions, which companies count as sustainable, how much of each to hold, what to exclude, are not made by the fund at all. They're made by whoever designs the index. So the power quietly migrates from the fund manager to the index provider. And there's a second consequence, which scholars call the stewardship paradox. Passive ownership weakens the incentive to engage. A passive fund can't sell a bad company. It has to hold whatever's in the index. So its only lever is its vote and its voice. Yet, as we discussed, it has little financial incentive to spend money using them. Passive investing, in other words, concentrates power in index providers while diluting the will to steward. Both halves of that sentence matter enormously. Let's follow that power to where it now sits. The index providers. Three firms dominate: MSCI, FTSE Russell, and S&P. They build the ESG indices that trillions of dollars of passive money mechanically replicate. And here's the point that most savers never appreciate: their methodology choices, how they weight companies, what they exclude, which rating inputs they feed in, steer that money. Change a rule in an index methodology and billions of dollars move. Now combine that with something we established back in part 5. ESG ratings diverge wildly between providers. Because different index builders rely on different ratings and rules, they construct genuinely different ESG portfolios out of the same market. One provider's flagship sustainable index might hold a company that another's excludes entirely. So tracking an ESG index sounds neutral and objective, but it's nothing of the sort. It embeds a whole series of contestable judgments made by a private company. Index design is a quiet but immensely powerful form of ESG governance, exercised by firms most people have never heard of, with very little public scrutiny. When you buy an ESG index fund, you are, in effect, outsourcing your definition of sustainable to MSCI or FTSE or S&P. And there's a conflict of interest lurking here that's worth naming. The index providers are paid by the fund companies that license their indices and by the very companies they rate, who often buy data and consulting services from them. So the firms defining green have commercial relationships with the firms being judged and with the funds doing the judging. That doesn't mean the ratings are corrupt, but it's exactly the kind of tangled incentive that regulators are now starting to scrutinize, much as they eventually scrutinized the credit rating agencies after the financial crisis. A private, lightly regulated industry quietly defining sustainable for trillions of dollars while being paid by the parties it assesses is not a stable arrangement. And I'd expect it to attract far more regulatory attention in the years ahead. If index providers define green for passive funds, regulators try to define it for the whole market. And the main European tool is the SFDR, which we met in parts 5 and 8. It sorts funds into 3 buckets. Article 6, funds with no particular ESG focus. Article 8, so-called light green funds that promote environmental or social characteristics. And Article 9, dark green funds with sustainable investment as their actual objective. Now, I have to stress the same crucial point again because the whole market gets it wrong. The SFDR is a disclosure regime, not a quality label. It was designed to make funds disclose what they do, not to award them green stars. Yet the market immediately treated Article 8 and Article 9 as marketing badges, as if Article 9 meant certified premium green. And the consequence was dramatic. When and the consequence was dramatic. When regulators issued stricter guidance in 2022 and 2023, a huge wave of funds were downgraded from Article 9 back to Article 8, wiping out an enormous amount of supposedly dark green assets under management. Not because the funds changed, but because managers no longer dared claim the top label. That downgrade wave is the clearest possible demonstration of how fragile and how loosely applied the line between these labels really was. Regulators didn't stop at disclosure buckets. They went after fund names directly. In 2024, ESMA, the European markets regulator, issued rules governing when a fund may use ESG or sustainable terms in its actual name. The logic is simple. A name is the first thing an investor sees, and calling a fund sustainable is a powerful marketing claim. So the rules set thresholds. To use ESG-style words in its name, at least 80% of a fund's investments must genuinely meet the relevant ESG or sustainability characteristics, and it must apply a set of exclusions modeled on the Paris-aligned benchmark rules. And to use the word sustainable specifically, more than 50% of the fund's investments must actually be sustainable investments. Existing funds had to comply by May 2025, and the result was striking. Around 20% of ESG-named funds either dropped the ESG terms from their names or changed their holdings to keep them. Think about what that tells you. 1 in 5 funds carrying a green name couldn't, or wouldn't, back it up once real thresholds were attached. The naming rules quietly exposed a great deal of loose labeling and forced the industry to either put up or shut up. Now to the strategy that, as we keep emphasizing, actually changes the real world. Stewardship or active ownership. Stewardship means using your rights as an owner, voting and engagement to improve a company's long-term value and its ESG behavior. The toolkit runs along an escalation ladder. It starts gently, with private dialogue between the manager and company management. If that doesn't work, it moves to shareholder proposals and to proxy voting against directors. A newer tool is the Say on Climate vote, where shareholders vote directly on a company's climate plan. And at the far end sits public escalation. To push managers to actually do this, several jurisdictions have introduced stewardship codes in the United Kingdom and the European Union that require managers to report on their engagement activity. And the reason all of this matters so much comes straight from Part 8. Engagement, not divestment, is increasingly seen as the genuine lever for real-world change. Selling your shares changes who owns the problem. Staying and pushing changes the problem itself. Stewardship is where sustainable asset management can, in principle, earn its keep. The open question, which the evidence in the next video will press hard, is whether the industry actually does enough of it. Let's look at how that voting power is really exercised, because there's a twist. The largest managers vote at thousands of company annual general meetings every year, far too many to research each one deeply. So in practice, they lean heavily on 2 proxy advisory firms, ISS and Glass Lewis. These 2 firms research the resolutions and issue voting recommendations, and between them they shape a large share of all the votes cast globally. Notice the pattern repeating yet again. Just as 3 firms dominate index building and a handful dominate asset management, 2 firms dominate voting advice. Concentration on top voting advice. Concentration on top of concentration. And this influence is increasingly contested. Critics on all sides argue that 2 private advisory firms shouldn't effectively decide so many corporate elections. Meanwhile, the Say on Climate votes I mentioned give shareholders a direct voice on climate plans. But here the politics intrudes. Since 2022, amid the anti-ESG backlash in the United States, several large managers have visibly backed fewer ESG proposals than they used to. BlackRock, for instance, has reported supporting a markedly smaller share of environmental and social shareholder resolutions. So the very stewardship that's supposed to drive real change is right now being dialed back under political pressure, a theme that will dominate the end of this chapter. Let's pull this together. Passive investing has migrated power to index providers, MSCI, FTSE, and S&P, who quietly define green for trillions of dollars while weakening the incentive to engage. Regulators have pushed back with the SFDR disclosure buckets and ESMA's naming rules, both of which exposed how loosely sustainable had been applied. And stewardship, the real lever for change, runs through proxy voting that's heavily shaped by two advisory firms and is now being scaled back amid the backlash. In the next video, we look at two landmark cases, the engine number 1 victory over ExxonMobil and the DWS greenwashing scandal, and then confront the hard evidence on whether ESG funds actually work. See you there. See.